starts with this. A jewel containing the ultimate power.
So, where do you think you're going with that emerald? Say something, you fake hedgehog!
Chaos Control!
Chaos Control is one of the most fascinating techniques in all of Sonic. It seems like you could almost use it for anything. Do you need to speedrun a level in Shadow the Hedgehog 2005? Chaos Control. Do you need to teleport away a giant spacecraft that is heading towards Earth? Chaos Control. Are you in a pod that's about to explode and you need to teleport out to escape? Chaos Control. Are you feeling sad about the existential struggle that you face every day? Chaos Control? Chaos Control is probably one of the most versatile abilities in the Sonic franchise because, again, it seems like it could be used for almost anything. After the brand new Sonic and Shadow Dark Beginnings animation, there's been some questions about Chaos Control and how it's used, how it's utilized within the franchise, and now there's controversy. Because there's always controversy. As a matter of fact, this ability is also going to be usable in-game in Sonic and Shadow Generation, so it's definitely worth exploring a little bit deeper into this and what the controversy is. So what exactly is Chaos Control? Because it's had very different uses and interpretations and rules throughout the entire Sonic franchise. So Chaos Control is an ability in the Sonic franchise that is a Chaos Power, which if you don't know what a Chaos Power is, it's an ability that manipulates Chaos Emerald energy, generally requires at least one Chaos Emerald to use, although not always. This ability generally, at least when it first came into the franchise, was essentially a way for the user to teleport by warping time and space. That's kind of like the big words that you use when you talk about Chaos Control. But we found throughout the series that the ability of Chaos Control has been evolving, as you can also use it to travel through time and dimensions. Another one of its uses and functions is that it can actually slow down time, allowing the user to move a lot quicker than people would expect. It can be used for time travel, interdimensional travel, it can be used to slow down time, it could be used to teleport. In other forms of Sonic media, like Sonic X, Chaos Control has a lot of versatile uses as well. Let's be honest here, it seems like Chaos Control is whatever SEGA wants it to be for whatever the specific story is. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even be surprised to see Chaos Control continue to evolve throughout the franchise, in future projects, titles, spin-offs, whatever. So without doing the entire history of Chaos Control, because we could keep going, the big reason for the controversy is the new Sonic and Shadow Generation's Dark Beginnings animation. So, in the plot of the story, Shadow gets a calling that makes him want to return to the Ark. His memories are being tampered with, and it seems like his worst fear may have come true. Are the Black Arms aliens, or even Black Doom himself, potentially returning? Well, spoiler alert, the answer to that question is yes, if you play the new Sonic and Shadow Generations. So, back to the animation, one of the central points of the plot is that Shadow needs to break into a base to find a rocket in order to get to the Ark. Now, a lot of people are wondering, why does Shadow need a rocket to get to the Ark when it was revealed in episode 1 that he does in fact have a Chaos Emerald, which means he should have access to Chaos powers such as Chaos Control, which would allow him to teleport and warp throughout time and space. So there are reasons and excuses that they could make for this being the case. You know, you don't necessarily have to do a deep dive and give an explanation to every single question that the fans have, because sometimes it can definitely create more confusion, and that is exactly what writer Ian Flynn did, and some fans are definitely not happy with it. And it kind of alters what we even know about Chaos Control in the first place, or what SEGA wants us to believe. And it seems like some mistakes were definitely made. So here it is. This tweet is what furthered the Chaos Control discourse about the spacecraft stuff. So it says, "I was right to question the spacecraft plot, by the way. Ian thinks that Chaos Control can only stop time and doesn't actually warp."
In IDW Sonic, the Warp Topaz was deemed the better for range travel to Chaos Control, which makes me beg the question, how far can Chaos Control warp?
Because it doesn't really warp. It stops space-time, so it appears that you're warping.
Over there. That's how far.
I guess it just depends on how fast you can run once you manifest Chaos Control.
I guess.
I mean, in Shadow's case, it's a pretty sincere distance, and in my case, it'd probably be like 5 feet.
question.
In response to this clip, this Twitter user said, and if you played the games, that's obviously false. This person says, warping space-time implies warping both time and space. I thought it was pretty evident that it could do both. Chaos control in general is just a kind of catch-all term for every chaos ability. This person says Shadow literally warps Rouge from Prison Island directly to the Ark. Did he assume Shadow just runs off with her, catches a rocket, gets into the Ark, and only then makes time return? This person says, I'm not here to make a fuss over little mistakes now and again, but seriously, I don't know what to say other than just wow. What is with this consistent downplay of what the cast can do? This is the type of thing I mean when I say horrible scaling can affect the writing. So without reading every single reply, you can understand some of the sentiment of the fan base, and people were confused because at this point, it's like, is everything that we know about chaos control false? Did Ian just get it wrong? Did he slip up? Like, what exactly happened? You would think that based off of that clip from his podcast, in addition to the fact that Shadow needs a spacecraft in order to get to the Ark instead of just using a Chaos Emerald like he has in the past, you would think that there's been a retcon of chaos control. So Ian has actually chimed in on this, and it looks like things are not as gloomy as some people are making it out to be. Ian Flynn responded to this post right here, which talks about how in Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow's able to warp Rouge back to the Ark. So Ian said, I think there's an implied passage of time between the escape and return to the Ark. So now people are probably freaking out reading the first half of this sentence. He then went on to say, what you should be asking is how Time Stop Sonic got out of the capsule and into the Ark, which is clearly warping space. And see, jazz hands. One of the biggest elements from the story of Sonic Adventure 2 that disputes the claim that chaos control is meant to allow someone to just stop time, which makes it seem like they're warping, is the fact that Sonic made it out of the capsule he was about to explode in, by the way, using a fake Chaos Emerald. In addition to the fact that Sonic and Shadow also use chaos control to clearly warp the Ark away from the Earth in the end of Sonic Adventure 2. Let's not forget that, like in Sonic 06, when you have 2 Chaos Emeralds, you can also time travel through time. So obviously, chaos control is more than just slowing down time, as evidenced in many Sonic games. What's nice about the remarks from Ian Flynn is that he did acknowledge that in an off-the-cuff podcast, he did make a mistake, and it's definitely true that chaos control is able to warp space and also be able to teleport users. Believe it or not, he is a human being, and people are allowed to make mistakes, and it's nice to see that he owned up to it. So now that we know nothing is necessarily wrong with chaos control, we still have to ask ourselves the question as to why Shadow still needed the rocket, given the fact that he had a Chaos Emerald, because some people were concerned with this and they thought that this meant that chaos control was in fact retcon. But here's my explanation. When Shadow teleported Rouge to Space Colony Ark, she did have 3 Chaos Emeralds in possession. Perhaps it's possible that the more Chaos Emeralds you have, the further and more powerful the teleportation with chaos control can be. We know that Shadow possesses an ability to warp without Chaos Emeralds called Chaos Snap, which if you watch the iconic Shadow the Hedgehog intro, you would know this, and you also would know that he can do this without a Chaos Emerald. So with 0 Chaos Emeralds, he has the ability to use Chaos Snap to warp. However, with Chaos Snap, he cannot go very far distances. Once Shadow gains the possession of 1 Chaos Emerald, he now has the ability to use Chaos Control. Perhaps Chaos Control furthers the ability of Chaos Snap. Who knows? In Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings, we know that he only has 1 Chaos Emerald. So the working theory is this. He only has 1 Chaos Emerald, and it is not enough energy to teleport to the moon. Not that Chaos Control doesn't teleport or warp, it's just that it's not enough energy. When he had 3 emeralds, that's when he was able to transport to the Ark. That's my working theory. Really, the point of this video is to discuss chaos control in of itself because it is a very interesting discussion. So let me know what you think.